Now we know that these two tests are working okay and that they are creating independent new records which start out with a ID of 1, so we know that the database is starting from fresh on each test. So I don't think we need this second one here. What we're going to do is concentrate on the first one and actually improve it, because this isn't ideal testing for an ID. What we'd like to do is pass it a little bit more knowledge and ask it to do a bit of a more rigorous test. Choose high definition for the best viewing experience, and if you'd like to join a growing group of software developers and take your skills to a new level, all you need to do is subscribe, click the little notification icon, and welcome. And so what I'd like to do, and this is sort of taking inspiration from Laravel. So I've not used Laravel for quite some time. However, I do remember it had very good testing, and you were able to test that a certain model was in the database if you passed it the name of the model and the name of the attributes. And so we're going to do something similar here. And so I'd like to have a test assertion which is called assert database has. So assert database has. And then this will take two arguments. The first one will be the entity, so in our case it will be the product, and then it will take an array of attributes that you want to test against. So for example, we want to test that the name is name. Okay, and then what else do we have? We have a description, and so equals description, and so you pass it an array of key value pairs. It looks in the database to see, do we have a record in the products table which has these attributes here. And so what we need to do is go and actually create this method somewhere. So where would be a good place to put this? Our products test is specific for products. However, it extends database dependent test, and we're making an assertion against a database, so that is the ideal candidate to put something like this. So let's just copy the name and let's go over to this, and we can just drop in a new assertion underneath our setup and our teardown. So public function assert database has, and this will need to be an entity as the first argument, so we'll just say entity, and that will actually be a string because we're going to pass it in string format, and then the next argument will be an array of attributes. And so for this first assertion, all I'm going to do, just to make sure that we are hitting this method and that it's working, I'm just going to this assert true, and obviously this test will pass, but then we'll know that we are hitting this assert database has method here. Okay, so let's go and run this. Back over to products test. I'll just make this a little bit bigger. PHP vendor, in fact I can do vendor bin PHPUnit like that, and then we'll say tests, and it is in products test. Okay, so can you see what error we're getting here? Actually, it's saying argument 1, we said that we were going to make argument 1 a string, but what we've actually done is we've gone and passed in the product. So what we want to be doing is we'll just read this message: type error app blah blah blah, assert database has argument 1 entity must be of type string. And so the way that we do a string is product : class, and so then it will actually look for a string. Let's go and run this again. Okay, so one test, one assertion. We can now start driving out the actual real functionality that we want this assertion to perform. The way we can do this is using a repository, and so each entity, each Doctrine entity has an associated repository by default. You can create your own custom repository for the entity, but we're just going to use the default one which is generated when we create the entity. And so what we're going to do is we're going to get the repository for the entity we're after, which is the product entity, and then in that we're going to use a method on the repository called findOneBy, and that will take an array of attributes exactly the same as what we are passing in here. The string entity is what we will pass into the find repository method, and that will find us the repository for the particular entity that we're looking for. Anyway, the best way to explain this is to actually demonstrate it. So we're going to say result, because this is the result we're expecting to get back, equals this entity manager, and we want repository, so get repository, and as you can see, it takes an entity name in string format. So entity, and then now we have our repository, and off that we can call the method findOneBy. And if you look, this takes an array of criteria. So I think that would actually be a better argument name. Let's call this criteria, and then everything is all matching up. Obviously we can call it whatever we want as long as we're passing in an array of key value pairs that we are looking for, but let's just stick to what how the API is documented. So result equals this entity manager get repository findOneBy, and so what it will return, it will either return us a product entity, okay, or it will return us null. So we're either going to have a product or null, which means we can cast that to a boolean. If we find a product entity and we cast that to a boolean, it will be true. If it comes back with null and we cast that to a boolean, then it will be false. So all we need to do really is just this assert true bool. So we're casting the result to a boolean, and we're just going to say result. And so if it finds a record in the database, this assertion will pass. If it doesn't find a record in the database, then this assertion will fail. Let's go and run the test again and see how we get on. Okay, one test, one assertion. So, quick sanity check to make sure that it's not passing by accident, because these things do happen. Let's go over to our products test and actually change the description to something which is different than what we've actually persisted in the database. And this, I think, will be our real, when we know for sure that what we have created is really working. So description, foobar. Okay, and hopefully this will fail. Okay, that's brilliant. That's excellent news. That means that we have definitely created a record in the database with these credentials, and so I'm well happy with that. What I'm not so happy with is when it does fail, our only message is failed asserting that false is true. What I'd really like to see is a message which says why it's failed. For example, we couldn't find a record in the database where name equals this and description equals this, and then you've got a far more descriptive message. It just helps debugging when you're running a lot of tests at once, and so we'll work on that one in the next one. If you've enjoyed this video and you'd like YouTube to show you more of my content, all you need to do is subscribe and click the little notification icon. I release new recordings every few days. Details of my schedule can be found on the community tab of my YouTube channel homepage.